All right, we are good. All right, so let's get started, everybody, because we have an amazing group of presenters for you all on self-determination. And so if everybody could just keep their lines on mute during this time so that we'll be able to hear our presenters. So the first presenter we have is Darlene Hanson, who is a speech and language pathologist, who really is the reason why so many people with disabilities in Southern California and other parts of the country are able to really express their hopes and dreams in their lives. And she's personally responsible for probably hundreds, if not thousands of people living their best lives. And so Darlene has also worked for Disability Voices United right now, leading one of our projects on supported decision-making. And she's gonna be leading a project starting in January on communication support. So we're so thrilled to have this legend of Darlene Hanson involved in Disability Voices United. So Darlene is gonna speak first. We're gonna have several other presenters afterwards, but she's gonna really sort of lay it out for those of you who are thinking about self-determination and communication. So go ahead, Darlene. You are muted.
Hi, thank you, Judy. That was very sweet. Yep, I'm Darlene Hanson, and I am going to open it up today just talking about how communication and communication support and services fits into self-determination, which I do realize, I'll just put this disclaimer out there, may be it isn't fitting moment that you're having. So depending on the age of the persons you're talking about. So that's the whole conversation. That's why we're having this conversation. So let me show you what I got organized for us as we think about this. Self-determination. Hang on one second, I think. There we go. Can you guys see this? Do you guys see my slide?
Yeah, but we're seeing all your slides. It's not place and start.
Oh my gosh.
Do you use two different screens, Darlene?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just got to make sure you're sharing the right screen.
Well, I'll turn this one off and see if that makes itself work better. I do this every single time, don't I, Ed? I'm so sorry. Let me try one more time.
It's okay. Hey, it confuses the heck out of me too, so don't worry about it.
I always think I have it right, and then I don't. How about now?
It looks like it's processing.
Yeah, now it's kind
okay. It's bringing your shared window to the front. It's paused. How can I unpause it? Why is it pausing? Huh. I didn't say to pause it. Share computer. Oh, that's weird. Now this one, I don't know what's happening. So let me stop sharing one more time, guys.
And I have it up on my screen if you need me.
I just don't, okay. Well, it's probably different now. Okay, let me just try it one more time. I don't know why it paused itself.
There we go. Looks great.
Now?
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
Woo, woo. Oh, it's going fast. Oh, then we're done. Okay. Anyways. Okay, so I want to open it just reminding us what self-determination, what's written into our self-determination. And that is that communication support is an option. Communication support includes communication aids. It could be a person, and anything that has to do with persons who have hearing, speech, vision impairments, no speech, limited speech, any communication difficulty, okay? You are included in the self-determination plans. The purpose of this service is to assist individuals to effectively communicate with service providers, family, friends, coworkers, and the general public. The following are allowable communication aids as specified in the participant's IPP. So facilitators, interpreters or interpreter services, translators, translator services, readers, and reading services. And I'm reading this because I think it's really important. This service also includes supports for the participant to use a computer technology to assist in communication. Such supports including training in the use of the technology, assessment for the need of ongoing training and support, and identification of resources for the support. This service is limited to personnel providing assistance and does not include the purchase of the equipment or supplies. Communication support services include evaluation for and training in the use of communication aids, including for individuals with LEP skills as specified in the participant's IPP. So I think the important part is that this document, the way we look at things actually says people are supposed to get the support that they need and the training that they need and the equipment that they need and all of that. So we need to remind and probably go back to this often, and we will go back to it again later, but I think it's really important to know that you are supported in getting communication services through the process. So I wanted to start though by reminding us of why are we in self-determination, and what does it mean to have support to a person whose communication is different, okay, or limited, or they're non-speaking and it's augmentative. Either way, but you have to remember that in the term self-determination is the word self, and that just means for everyone, our persons included, it's a way of distinguishing yourself from others and being introspective and reflexive, okay, action. So we want to help people have a means to contribute, to think about themselves, and to think about where they want to go and how they want to impact their world, their environment, their community, their day. It's a really engaged process, and it's about them. It's not about how we want to do things, although we're just a shared community, but we want to focus on the self part. So what are they thinking? What are they saying? What are they agreeing to? What are people disagreeing to? Okay, that's how we're determining the self part. We also, I'm reminding us that we have the process person-centered planning. Again, this process, it's planning for the person's future as an individual, for their vision. Okay, so we're really focusing on that individual, and this person might be 10 years old, or the person might be 45 years old. That part isn't described in this. It's about the person. Okay, so 10-year-olds have visions too. They might want to play soccer, or they might want to join a church group, or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or they might want to stay home and play video games. But our kids have their visions as well, and we need to figure out ways and create cultures and communities that incorporate and include rather the individual. So how do you get the person involved? Well, here's some things that I put in as just a suggestion. Make a plan to get the person involved. We have to think these things through, because we have to get prepared. We're going to have to allow time. We're going to have to remind ourselves over and over again to keep the focus on the person. It's real easy to start talking about what you think the person wants, and it takes extra time and extra preparation to check in with the individual. You want to make sure you go over the details and use plain language, but I love plain language, but I don't want us to think about plain language in a way that means that you're simplifying it. You're not simplifying, you're just making it plain language. If you think about the way we write professional documents, those are not plain language, and they are difficult for many of us to understand. So don't assume that you should skip something. It should be a little red flag for us when we find ourselves uttering the words, I don't think he's going to understand this part, so we'll skip it. Okay, don't do that. Think of a way to help your person understand what you're talking about. Nobody knows your person better than you do. So I think we can get creative and do these things. Don't assume that you should skip things. I also on this part wanted to remind us that sometimes you have to get creative with how you're going to get the person involved. Some people don't like talking and being in a large group. Maybe you're going to have to help them prepare their input prior to a large group meeting, or a single one-on-one meeting even. Think about how does the environment have to be situated? How, not just their systems of communication. So some strategies. just in remembering that we want the person to be seen as competent. We want the person to develop their own autonomy and their ability to relate with others. That's what self-determination is going to be about. So know and trust the nonverbal communication. That doesn't mean that you're sitting in la la land. Like sometimes professionals will maybe as a parent make you think. You're just saying that he thinks that. No, you know your persons, and you know that when their body tenses up in a certain way, that means they're uncomfortable with that information, okay, with what's going on. You advocate for that. That's an okay thing to do. So trust that you know that, and advocate for it with it. You can use your communication dictionaries. We've talked about this in other presentations, and if anybody doesn't know what that is and needs more information, you can just connect with us and we'll send some information on that. But a communication dictionary is basically describing the way the person communicates, especially if it's a little bit different than what people would consider standard spoken English or Spanish or whatever language you're speaking. So the communication dictionary kind of gives a definition to the unique stuff that we get from people that we just know because we know them. Another strategy would be provide information. Again, like I said, don't skip it. Provide information. If you have to draw it out, if you have to use a simulation that kind of ties it into their favorite movie, however you can get the information expressed and understood, provide that. When talking together, provide feedback. Keep the conversation going, okay? Again, you need to be prepared and have the output available so your person can participate. Sometimes the person's input might be prepared ahead of time. I mentioned that already. So you might have to, do it in a separate meeting. That's what that one's about. Person-centered meetings versus team meetings and problem solving. Oh, okay, this is important. You don't want to have a person-centered meeting about the person's problems, okay? If you as a team feel like you as the team people need some support figuring something out, then have a separate meeting about that, okay? Because the person-centered meeting is about the person and what they want. And most of us don't want to sit around having other people talk about the problems that we have, okay? So really think about making those separate for them. For the AAC user, you're going to do all that, but you're going to make sure you have the AAC system available, that you have the support available, and you may have to suggest that the person get involved. I put this one in special because people will often say, well, he didn't initiate anything. Yeah, initiation is hard for people. So if you're the support person, you can sit there and say, so Greg, did you have anything you wanted to contribute? Okay. Even if you didn't see a sign of initiation, just offer up those opportunities. Don't let the meeting go on without your persons being involved. So what do you want as families from self-determination? These are the things I'm hearing. You guys, we're going to have time later today and you can chime in for sure. But I'm hearing people wanting social skills, communication skills development, expressive language, AAC, trained communication partners, and technology. All those things are written into self-determination already, okay? So we have to figure out when we're being challenged how we're going to advocate for that. So what are our challenges? These are things that I'm seeing and hearing. Regional centers continue to see speech and language and AAC as a service provided by the schools. This is for the school age population. And yes, it is provided by the schools, but the schools aren't responsible for your child at home, okay? So those services it's not mandated that those services go into the home. So from the school. So really regional center or somebody from the public services should be funding these supports. Regional centers and insurance companies will fund behavior services for multiple hours per week, but they don't do that for speech and language. That's a problem. We need to continually add and keep stepping up to advocate for the fact that, behavior is, especially if you're talking about behaviors, as well here. Communication is seen once a week, maybe twice a week for therapy, often seen as a luxury, and inappropriate timelines are placed on the expectations of when services will be done. Okay, if you're talking about behavior and communication, anybody will say to you that, oh, behavioral difficulty is because of a communication difficulty. But yet we put behaviorists in charge of making those plans. And we really need to put if communication is the challenge, then the communication needs to be in the front seat. So we really need to start thinking about, where's all this communication support? It's not once a week for an hour when you have 40 hours of behavior support, or you have 20 hours of supervision for behavior support, and you only have 1 hour a week for communication or speech and language. That doesn't make sense. And we need to keep reminding people of that and challenging them. I know you guys work hard at that, but I'm just kind of saying that's the right thing to do. So just because it's all written there, okay, I won't read this again, but it is here, all right? So that's me in hyperspeed. Sorry for the translation part. But I wanted to kind of set the stage for how we're going to be doing things. And I apologize because now I'm seeing that I have the wrong camera on and you guys had to look at my ears. Sorry. So I think next we are going to go to Tami Barmache.
Yes, we are. So let me introduce Tami. Tommy's going to make this real for everybody after hearing. Thank you, Darlene. That was amazing. Just amazing. And Tami is the talk about amazing, the amazing mom of a young man named Dylan Barmache, who is a celebrity, in case any of you want to Google him, because he has been on commercials for Apple iPads and all these other things, and he's a college student. And Dylan presented at a self-determination conference that Disability Voices United had last year. And so Tami is going to talk a little bit about Dylan and then share his presentation. So thank you, Tami.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for inviting me. So right, Judy has said I'm Dylan's mom. Dylan's 20, and he communicates by spelling on a letterboard or typing on a keyboard, and has worked a lot with Darlene, who we also think is amazing. I think he called her his hero once. But his needs are quite complex, and I think that once someone has been practicing for years and has established a communication system, it's easy to look at them and say, oh, my kid couldn't do that, because he doesn't sit that way or whatever, but Dylan certainly doesn't look that way a lot of the time either. So I just sort of need to say that up front, because his needs are quite complex, both communication and regulation needs, being able to sit and be present, being able to focus and hold his thought. All of that requires a lot of practice. But in order for him to really meaningfully communicate all of his thoughts and ideas, he needed to have a communication system where he could actually spell everything out. He needed the 26 letters, because there was no way that we could anticipate the things that he has said to us over the last 10 years. And so I think that I wanted to just comment on what you said, Darlene, as far as, we know our children, and we do, and I don't want to take that away at all. But I have to say that when he started to communicate this way, and it took a long time, but the things he started to say really were not always congruent with how I interpreted what I saw on the outside. So once I learned better what these things meant, then I could say, yeah, when he's laughing right now, that's not a funny laugh, that's an anxious laugh. But until he was able to tell me that, he might have looked like he was testing me. He might have looked like he was just being a brat, and then you find out later that it's extreme anxiety and nerves and worry. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that how important it is to really work towards kind of digging deeper and finding out what's going on there. So in order to be able to communicate this way, you have to have a trusted and familiar partner. And I think that's the key here. And that is difficult to find under the best of circumstances, but certainly when you're limited by boxes that exist. I know every regional center is a little bit different, but for us, you kind of have respite, you have a personal assistant, you could have maybe some adaptive skills or independent living skills. I think those are pretty much our boxes for an adult. And it's difficult to say, how do I get this person who really needs to fully encompass all of Dylan's needs, or a few people, and have them fit into these boxes? So, we've had to be very creative over the years, but self-determination is exciting for us because Dylan can be the center of a person-centered plan with all of his trusted team and family, and we can then try to, as he always says to us, make it happen. Like, I'm the driver, but you need to make it happen. So we hope that self-determination will give us the opportunity to make things happen for him without having to always adjust to parameters that don't really meet him where he is. And there was one other thing I wanted to say, let's see. So I was listening to Darlene and it got me firing, but I wanted to say, I know that it's person-centered planning when you have a child or an adult child who doesn't really have reliable communication can seem to be a very intimidating process. It can seem like, how on earth are they going to contribute meaningfully to it? But to me, if that is the thought, then one of the goals right away should be pursuing more meaningful communication, whatever that next step is. I'm not saying the next step is open, fluid, complex communication, but whatever, to consistently push for more and more and more, more open-ended communication, more complex communication, and believe in that capacity to expand the communication. So I just really wanted to say that if it doesn't exist, then that should be top priority. Okay, so now, like Judy said, in November, Dylan had a chance to express his why he is looking forward to self-determination, what he feels it will mean in his life. So I'm going to share the screen, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that I do this right. Okay. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to share. And I'm going to, let me know if anything doesn't work here.
It looks good.
Okay, here we go.
When people look at me, they see the autism so plainly on the surface of my every action. It is obvious that I do not live a typical life and that I have unique needs. Yet, somehow, when it comes to having those needs met, the area becomes gray and foggy. I have to justify the supports I have that let me navigate my life. I have to prove that the people who make the most basic parts of my day possible are really necessary. And for some reason, I have to prove that I'm, quote, getting better, unquote. I have to prove that even though I need specific supports with measurable goals now, that those goals are being met over time with the understanding that someday I will not need supports. I have the mixed burden of proving that I have such impactful autism that I must have supports in place, but I must also demonstrate that I am moving in a direction towards some moment when suddenly I will be able to operate on my own. I juggle college life, cross-country running, and the challenges of autism, all without open and free communication. I rely totally on support staff for my communicative typing, and not just any support staff. I have Jim and Deb. If they quit tomorrow, I would lose everything I've built in my life almost instantly. They cannot simply be replaced by some other body. I built communication with people slowly, with hard work and constant practice over weeks and even months, and this deals with only a small piece of the complex support I require. I would have to drop out of school. I would have to stop writing. I certainly wouldn't be in places like this, speaking out to people like you. I would lose the basic instrument of my agency in my own life. So when we talk about the system as it is without self-determination, we have to look at the structures that keep Jim and Deb by my side. They work for an agency that is a vendor with the regional center. What happens to me if for some reason that agency shuts down? What happens to me if the regional center stops doing business with that agency? It might feel like an unlikely case, but the stakes are so high that even small chances of losing access to my support staff are terrifying. Under our current system, I can't simply carry on with Jim or Deb. They don't work for me, they just work with me. Self-determination changes that. Suddenly, I can hire exactly who I need to stand by me without relying on systems I have no power over. I live my life every day. I know what challenges I face. I know what works, what doesn't work, what I'm willing to give up and what I'm willing to take on. Right now, however, the extent of my services is decided by someone in an office that I see maybe twice a year, if that. I am told that they know what I need and how much of it I need. They determine the number of hours I have a voice on a weekly basis, and every semester break there is a period of time spent in agony waiting to hear if I will be graced with continued services in the following semester. I am always told that surely the regional center will approve the hours, but what if they don't? What if they just decide I no longer qualify? Or what if they decide to cut my hours in half? I live with those anxieties about every 6 months, just hoping that someone in an office who barely knows me will check the box that says I get to keep living my current life. That's why self-determination is so important to me as a student and as a self-advocate. My services allow me to have a college experience, and I need to have the power to make sure my needs are supported. College is not a one-size-fits-all system. Each semester can be different. Each week can be different. I need flexibility to bring supports into my life as situations demand, and I don't always have time to wait for someone else to approve. Many opportunities exist in my daily life, and just like any adult, I want to experience as much as I can. But the crucial piece is that I must have really well-trained support for all of the facets of my life. So when there is a football game or a club I could join, or I want to hang out with a friend, I need a trusted support partner with me or I miss out on those experiences. I could, of course, have my parents take me places, but as an adult, that does not at all represent the autonomy I am entitled to like anyone else. Not to mention, I would be cut off from my method of communication. At that point, I might as well stay home. I think about all of the things that I want to accomplish after college. The road is wide open before me and I have dreams about going forward with my advocacy work. I can't be assured I can continue to write and speak at conferences unless I am in control of my supports and services. I make my own goals, and I should be able to determine what supports I need every day because I can't live the life I want if I'm trying to fit into some existing program. The main thing is that I am just tired. I am just tired of wondering how many hours of services I'll get each semester. I'm tired of worrying that I will get too few hours and we will have to invent some elaborate way to meet my support needs. I am tired of not knowing if I'll be approved for summer classes or winter break, or if the regional center will approve my services for the week before the semester starts for my cross-country training camp. I'm tired of not having any control over my own life. I cannot wait to just be able to know I have what I need and who I need with me when I need them. That's why I am so happy for self-determination to become a choice in my life. Thank you.
Is it?
Everybody's clapping.
There's nothing I can add to that.
I mean, you need to email that to me because we need to put that out there because that was incredible. That said it all. It was amazing. All right, thanks, Tami. And we're gonna have Q&A for everybody. We have more incredible speakers. Connie and Harvey Lapin, you all probably know Connie and Harvey. They were the perspiration and inspiration behind the self-determination law. And they have a son who was one of the first people to work with Darlene. How many years ago, Connie? Like 40 years ago? More, 45 years ago? No, because that Darlene's not old enough.
91.
Yeah, Darlene's not old enough to.
Well, I know him before that, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, so I wanted Connie and Harvey to speak because they have a son who's 52 who never had a really effective way to communicate, and they're using self-determination even at the age of 52 to work on communication with him. So go ahead, and Connie and Harvey.
We're going to break ourselves up and try to be brief. It's really hard when you're, as I call us, octogenarians, which means we're old as dirt. And I thought octogenarian sounded fancy, but old as dirt is the reality. So you were informed that my middle son, Sean, is challenged by autism. He's 52 years old. He got lots of labels, but basically he was called nonverbal, which meant limited use of verbal speech. I was trained at the University of Michigan, and now that you know I'm old as dirt, I graduated in 1961 as a speech pathologist. So you would think, oh, yay, I'm ready to go and I can be of great help. And the reason I bring this up is because I feel there's still, I don't know the right term to use, there's still a lot of feeling about people that don't use traditional speech, that just because they don't talk, they don't know anything. So my history was they used terms like idiot, imbecile, moron, and they were like academic terms. And so people like my son, Sean, and others that we all know, and were disenfranchised and dehumanized. And so when Sean was diagnosed, and this is the good part, there's always good and bad news. He was diagnosed at age 2. So that's 50 years ago, probably older than anyone else on this call. Although I know Judy's having a birthday and she's beyond that age. So what did they do?
I'm 29.
Yeah, well, celebrate in Celsius like I do. So what did they do with Sean? Well, they had to give him an IQ. Do they still use Stanford Benet's? I mean, I have no idea, but I would love if I had the time to ask you what you guess his IQ was. It was 32. And it had standing. It had standing. The professionals never assumed competence, and they never had any technology. And when he was of a certain age, probably around 10 or 11, the speech therapist said to me, and I always said when I went into an IEP meeting that I was a speech therapist, maybe I could scare him into thinking, you know, or doing something positive. She said, well, you know what? I think Sean has gotten all the language he's going to get. Of course, she never figured out what it was. And we have younger children that need it more. So I would call that term cannibalism, but it would show you that if you didn't make progress, you know, you were done. I think when I saw a t-shirt after we discovered assistive technology and things like facilitated communication, and I tried to find it, and Judy, you won't believe it, I actually didn't save it because I'm a saver. It says not speaking doesn't mean you have nothing to say. And I think that if that could be our motto for this whole talk, is not speaking doesn't mean I have nothing to say. And with self-determination, I like the way, Darlene, you mentioned self. I mean, because what we want that self to do is to be in charge. And that's what self-determination says. I want to say that some people may look at my son and say, how could self-determination ever help someone like him? We already lived that battle through supported living. When they were, and it just recently deinstitutionalizing our state hospitals in California, I sat on a DC task force and I couldn't get them to use, it was almost like a forbidden word to say, when they come out, why don't you consider supported living? Because it was more individualized and it felt more like self-determination before self-determination became a law. We must not let our future look like the past. And self-determination gives us that possibility. Sean has a lot to say. He communicates to us all the time. And guess what? It's our challenge to figure it out. It's not his challenge to make us believe he really can communicate. And Darlene, to your point about plain language, I'm a big person about plain language, but get this picture in your mind. Because of my background, and I realized that, you know, he had maybe apraxia and maybe brain damage and all that kind of stuff. I spoke to him like a little child, put on chair, drink milk, you know, and then once I realized that was such a mistake, I think he forgave me. You know, mothers, what can I say being a mother? And then I started talking to him like I talked to everybody else. And he let me take his hand. And so I just want to say that we make a lot of mistakes, and we're part of a society that doesn't value the gifts our people have. We need to expect competency and expect gifts. And he is through self-determination and will always be in charge. And no matter how people present themselves, it doesn't mean they have nothing to say. I found a quote by Walt Whitman, and I think it can resonate with every one of you. And it sure does with me and Sean. Every individual makes a singular contribution to the story of the world, and thereby shares in all our stories. So we all are interconnected. So Harvey, take it away.
Whoa, where do I start? My hero is Sean, because he has persevered. I have a good friend, Nora Baladarian. A tongue twister. She's a wonderful woman. I've known her for years, and we talk about, you know, abuse. She's an authority on our children and basically people that have limited language. And it's over 90% of people like my son have been abused. We've gone to gamut. I founded an agency. We've gone to group home. What we found in the group home for people like Sean, there was favoritism. There's the code of silence, and obviously it did not. He ran away every day. That tells you something. That's communication. We did supported living. My opinion is great, but when you're big, a lot of people in an agency, it's the curse of big. It's virtually, in my opinion, impossible to be person-centered. I hope to say it this way. Why I fell in love with self-determination is basically, if things aren't working for your kid, it's very, very difficult to change things. It's almost impossible. It could take a year, 2 years.
Or hire and fire.
Oh, you can't. You're not in charge. Bottom line is, in self-determination, you do a person-centered plan and a budget with a fiscal management service. They're your accountant. Okay, but you can change in 30 days. You can get kicked out of an agency in 30 days, and you can change in 30 days. That's power. That's the power of the golden rule. Them with the gold do make the rules. So person-centered is the only thing I think in self-determination. Is the foundation of self-determination. And if you get a good facilitator for talking about abuse and things like that, and that person can be the monitor. That person can be the best salesperson for you. That can be your personal shopper. We got a long way to go in self-determination, in training and having competency in that, and getting rid of those stupid barriers that have been put in our way. But in my opinion, after 50 years of being an advocate and a father, it's the best chance we have. Hello.
Thank you. That was amazing. That was brief and incredible. Thank you. Everybody's clapping for you.
It was brief for us.
So our final presenter is Tim Jin, who uses, like Dylan, he uses technology or pointing to letters to communicate. Tim is one of the champions of self-determination and has an even different perspective than those you've heard. So Tim, you want to unmute yourself and go for it.
Hi, my name is Tim, as everyone knows. My presentation is going to be really short because I didn't know that I was speaking tonight until after I had lunch. This is not my best because I just typed this on the fly. For everyone that knows me, I'm nonverbal because of my disability. Communication is very important to everyone, but especially for me. When I handle my own budget, I can put funding aside for a new communication device if general resources, like medical fund. I have another example that I just thought about. Let's say you are interviewing new possible cares or services like taking a Zoom class on poetry reading. Because I am not verbal, I might need someone on my side to communicate for me. Maybe my independent facilitator can help me find someone who can assist me in class to relay my thoughts to others in the poetry class. I wish that I had self-determination when I was growing up, because my family probably spent way more than a down payment on a house on my communication needs, because over time, I needed different AAC devices to better suit my needs. Because like tennis shoes, you outgrow the shoes as soon as you get bigger. It's just like this for someone that depends on the NAAC device to communicate.
Thank you, Tim. That was fantastic for someone who I just asked after lunch to join this. You're getting applause. Tim, by the way, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to, am I allowed to announce what you're getting ready? No, okay. You'll hear about it at some point in the future. All right, well, thank you to Darlene, to Dylan, to Tami, to Connie, to Harvey, and to Tim for really presenting for those of you that, number one, you can really, just because a person is non-speaking doesn't mean that they can't fully participate in developing their self-determination program, and how you can use the self-determination program to advance that person's ability to communicate. Whether it's through hiring communication partners, by purchasing technology, making sure that you have all the supports that you need to be able to communicate. So I'm now going to open it up for questions. And the way that we do questions in SDP Connect is through raising your hand. And the way that you raise your hand is by going down, clicking on participants. And then you'll see next to, underneath the list of participants, you'll see the opportunity to use raise hand. Don't go ahead and raise your hand like I'm doing right now, because there's so many people on this call, I can't see everybody. So you have to use the raise hand feature. The other thing you can do is if you're unable to do that, you can use, you can type something in the chat, and both Ed and I will monitor the chat and see if there's any questions. The reason, I should say that the reason why we have decided to use the integrated interpretation feature of Zoom is because we have found that the people who are on the outside Spanish speaking line were not really able to get their questions asked in a way that was useful. So for those of you who are using the Spanish line, you will be able to use the raise hand feature, and I will be able to call on you. And for those of you who are English speakers, our interpreter will be able to simultaneously translate for us what the Spanish speaker is saying. So it's a really fantastic system. We just have never used it because it can be somewhat complicated. So, all right. So I'm right now not seeing anybody raising their hands yet, although I see Chantal wanting to. So while she's trying to, okay, Chantal, did you find it? I don't see your hand raised, but I know you want to because I'm seeing it in the chat. So go ahead and unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask your question. Hey, you raised your hand. Good job.
So thank you
and
to the
unmuted. Perfect.
It's really wonderful. And it's so amazing because recently I was thinking of contacting Darlene to ask her, what do we do as we're getting older and our son, daughters? So Jeremy's 31 and he is in supported living. And I have to say right now, we haven't gone through the self-determination process, though we're getting ready to do that, only because he is already having very much of a self-determined life through what we're doing with him right now. But we are going to go through it through the actual self-determination phase. But it's been a challenge because I've been able to have training for staff to communicate, but then it's like this whole thing of really knowing your child. Like Jeremy, I was very sick. Jeremy had behaviors, and immediately, even though I've told them there's, things out on their Google Drive, like if Jeremy's having behaviors, check for pain, and you do it just with yes, no, and a scale. So you don't have to, because he can't stand somebody going near him and having to type. But yet they forget, they don't think about it. And it has to be mom from her deathbed practically figuring it out. And it just makes me really nervous because I'm 63 and I'm young compared to Connie, and I'm old compared to Judy. But what's going to happen for someone like my son, and how do I lifelong make that happen? Because Jeremy's very much of a self-advocate. Jeremy communicates with all his support staff, full sentence. I mean, I've worked very hard on that. Jeremy's worked the hardest. But yet there's these things. And again, it's all because it's based on behavior. So, he's having PTSD. So I don't know, like going forward, like lifelong, I feel like they're listening to me here in San Diego and getting what Jeremy needs, though I really appreciate more tips, and I'm getting that ready for the self-determination process. But how do we ensure that as we go along? Because he's 31, he's not 10, he's not 11. So I don't know if there's any answers or.
I can offer up. I think that's if you think about what supported decision-making is, which is, partially in self-determination, of course, but supported decision-making is building a team of people, a group of people, a community of people, whatever you're calling it, who understand you and advocate with you, for you. And so in that team, it's not a team of one, it's going to be a team of multiple people. So you're building the momentum to just keep people coming and going, but the team itself, the fact that there is a team, stays intact. Okay, the members might change over 20 years or something like that, but there's always some people, some group of people around to support Jeremy, for example, to be the communicator and the person that he is, right? It's not just you're the only knowing person. And that's what's supported decision-making is all about. That's the part I really like about supported decision-making, is that it's not a thing, it's a community.
Yes,
Did anybody else want to add to the answer? Tami, Connie, Harvey? Go ahead, Connie.
I want to say that Sean typed a while ago, and we had a different kind of a situation. But I would say being part of an agency, again, this is just our personal, and we had people that believed it and people that wanted it to happen. But I see the difference in self-determination rather than my son being in a supported living agency. Is the thing, we are really in charge. Darlene's talking about a team, and the minute we got into self-determination, communication is probably one of the most important things in the world that we direct through Sean as at the highest one of the highest priorities. It just doesn't happen in agencies. I mean, as much. I'm not saying it never happens, but it felt like I am saying to everybody, he's got to be able to communicate. And my son has a lot of challenges, like many of the people that I call them children, our children. But it was like free at last. I can really make this happen. And I see a whole different attitude with our staff. We have quite a bit of staff. Sean's a 2-on-1, and he's got a health and safety waiver. I mean, he's got a lot of things going, but he's in charge. We're in charge. And what's the most important thing? I don't know if that helped you. I mean, I'm not against agencies.
No, but the beauty of it is if something isn't working out, you can go bill payer model. You're still in charge there, but what I want to say, and I don't want to be negative. There are kids, and it's a hard thing to fathom, but it is forever. I have to say, it is forever.
It is. No, that's very helpful. And I just want to say another thing is that Nora Baladarian has been and continues to be extremely helpful to Jeremy. And so I highly recommend her if people have someone with different communication styles than verbal. She's amazing.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a good friend.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Chantal. So I should let everybody know that while the way we do SDP Connect is that we encourage you to ask questions to our panelists, but you can also ask questions on anything else that's going on with you in the self-determination program, and we will all do our best to answer it. So feel free. I hope people are finding the hand raise button, because it is, this is the
Tami
least
has a
amount of questions we've ever had. Go ahead, Tami. Go ahead, Tami. Did you want to answer as well?
Well, I loved the answers, and I think that they were really helpful. As I've been learning more about supported decision-making over the past few years, mostly through you, Judy, and then expanding from there. I love that idea of kind of having an advisory board, because we speak about that a lot. What happens after, I mean, when we're not around, right? And the idea that, maybe it's not going to be just the sibling but if there's a group of people, whether it's family or close friends, that know kind of more the day in, day out, and the way that we have supported what our children, adult children are, wanting in their lives. And if they have more people in their lives that know some of those finer details, they can kind of fill in when we're not able to, I guess. So I'm kind of just echoing, but I actually thought, if no one else is asking questions right now, I would love to hear more from Connie and Harvey about some of the things that have changed for you with self-determination, maybe a little more specific. So one of them was that you're not using an agency, you're kind of finding that you're hiring people individually, and they're more responsive maybe to your requests or to Sean's requests because of that. What are some other things that you're finding that are different?
I think it comes down to, there's an attitude change. I know it's hard to express that, but we have team meetings. John Francis is somewhere around here. I can't find him.
Yeah, I see him.
There you are, John. John is a facilitator for us. And it really is focusing on one person. It's who it's all about. Darlene's involved with Sean going back. It may be almost 30 years ago, but so what? My issue is, we all believe in the Constitution, life, liberty. I want my son to have a chance to pursue happiness. And I think he does now.
And the difference is really, I mean, I know we're diehards, Harvey's the reason. I mean, we got it from Michigan, self-determination, but it has to do with staff a bit, because an agency has staff, and there are rules, and and now it's just all about Sean.
Right.
Even though Sean never lived with another person with a disability. I don't know how many people.
Group home he did.
Oh, I'm sorry, when he was in supported living.
No, in a group home.
No, I said when he moved to supported living.
Right.
And so it's a mind change, and a person-centered plan. I mean, that says, okay, this is our imprint. This is the blueprint for Sean, and who would never attend a meeting. And so I'm looking at you while this is so weird, I'm being Zoom, but it is a whole paradigm change, even though supported living sounds like self-determination. I have this little card on the principles of supported living. And I thought, my God, that's self-determination. We have tried it. A lot of families, I mean, I feel like comfortable speaking as family members. I'm not a self-advocate, I'm a family advocate. is we thought we had it. We thought we were doing it, and words, you know, kind of matter, but I got seduced by them and they weren't happening. And what was real about it was the staff. So someone could say, oh yeah, I know he can speak. I know, and I'll do it. And then like Chantel was saying, it just didn't happen. And so I don't know if that helped you, but
we have to fight now to make sure it happens for everyone. There is one regional center in Michigan. All their people, what you want to call them, I call them our customers, are in self-determination. One other county, almost all of them are, but one, all of them are. And the system isn't going to go away. It's going to change where people are going to be a lot happier in their job because it's going to mean something.
And we
That's
talk
the bottom line.
We talk about making mistakes all the time, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Lessons learned, it's my favorite little thing. Okay, that's okay. Lessons learned. What do we learn? And but Sean is in charge.
If you read our website, we screwed up, I guarantee you, more than we were successful. You know, but every once in a while you hit a home run. You do.
You all. Jan, you have a question.
Let me unmute here.
Great.
I have two families that are kind of friends, and I'm helping them get in this process and get into self-determination. And I can't seem to get them on board with understanding that their adult child with different challenges for speaking, that the communication is like the key component, but I also can't get them to let them be the center. Do you know what I mean? The parents who finally figured out with that communication, when you said that, I thought that's exactly, I feel like this little girl's locked in. You know, she has no way to communicate that's been working. And when you said that was like the first thing, Tami, that I thought, how do I help that parent see that that is so important? I mean, I've been kind of trying to say the right things, but I can't get there. Any tips?
Tami, you got anything?
That's $1 million question. What do you think,
Harvey,
Darlene?
Harvey, you're muted, honey.
Okay.
I think
I believe so much in an authentic person-centered plan. That's if you really, really take your loved one, I'll use it that way, and they're in charge of that person-centered plan. I'm telling you, you'll see their eyes open. And it's tough to do that. There's a book that we got from Minnesota, and they're all Californians that wrote it, okay? But I call it 101 person-centered planning, and it can be gotten, okay? And that's the foundation of everything, that one person. And all of us here are about the person we really, really care about. And it shouldn't be any different to anyone. You know, it's not a group setting. It's not an agency. It's a person.
I think because I'm a professional, speaking as a professional here. So, but you might think about informally thinking about the communication dictionary concept. Because when we ask people to complete a communication dictionary, we're really asking them, what do you know about your person's communication already? And parents especially, you know how your person communicates, right? And so that person might say, well, when they lift their eyes up, that's a yes. Or that when their body gets tense, that's a no. Or that, you know, he only answers yes when he means it, otherwise he doesn't say anything. There's little idiosyncratic things that people do. And so when we have that conversation, the persons you're having the conversation with start to realize, I do know a lot about how he does talk to me a little bit, you know, and then start putting that into, so you could be. I can remember years ago when one of my friends had her son moving into supported living, and he didn't have great communication, but he had some communication. But she didn't think he would understand the concept of moving out, and she was so worried that he was going to feel abandoned and like told he had to leave the house and everything. And so we all took baby steps to get him his place to live in. He loved it. he was a part of the whole process. She never really until afterwards felt like she was positive he was a part of the story with her. You know, she was hoping that she was doing what he was wanting, but she was never willing to admit that she really understood him until afterwards. But it's because you don't want to fail your child, right? So I think the communication dictionary is a good way to just kind of open up that conversation and acknowledge that, no, you have some ways of knowing that he does or doesn't like things, or she does or doesn't like things. Meanwhile, try and find an avenue for communication in the AAC system.
Right. I saw a lot of communication when they said she didn't have any, just observing her in a casual setting. And so that's why I was like, that dictionary is a good word, because that's what I was going to ask for, something like that, so that I can utilize that or encourage her in that way during the person-centered plan.
Yeah.
Was Tim sharing?
Tim, go ahead. For those of you who don't know, Tim types with his toe at the base of his, there's his toe, at the base, on an iPad at the base of his wheelchair.
I can help answer this. When I was a whippersnapper, I got my first communication device before I learned how to spell my name. My family was extremely proactive in my well-being at getting my thoughts out. I always have a problem even in 2020, why some families are so hesitated at letting their child to communicate in whatever form. And I'm 45. Just imagine if I was born now and how much better I will be.
You get better with age, Tim.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Tami.
I think what, Tim, you speaking is really what I was going to say. I think that the biggest shifts that I've seen when when families either talk to me or if I'm having a conversation with a parent is, I find the biggest shifts always come when they get words directly from somebody who is communicating themselves. So we had a couple of friends that made some shifts when Dylan or someone else directly spoke to them. I had one friend who Dylan was in a class with him for years, and Dylan spent many years in a self-contained moderate to severe autism classroom that they were in together. And his friend was still in that classroom, and he was starting to get very frustrated, and the mom was really worried because he was having a lot of what you would call behaviors. And Dylan ended up speaking directly to her and saying, he's really bored. He needs to be challenged. He wants to learn. And she just started crying. I mean, it's nothing that I could have ever said, it came from him. And I saw that happen again with another family. And short of that, if you don't know anyone, if they don't have a relationship with someone who maybe communicates a little more openly, sometimes people kind of start to think a little, see things a little differently when they read a book or blog or watch a video. So, I think sometimes like Darlene said, sometimes it's just a little at a time. I found like in school, if I would say to someone who saw him as completely not understanding, and if I said, oh no, he can understand grade level at, middle school, that was difficult. But if they could see him just make a choice that indicate, like, you know what, Darlene, you might want to speak to choices, like, because that is so powerful and it doesn't require the typing, but really building that skill of choices. The whiteboard is, one of the most moments that really stands out for me is we had an inclusion facilitator in middle school. Dylan was just beginning to have steady support and starting to mainstream into like 2 gen ed classes. And she was supporting him, and we were trying to sort of, show her. Actually, I'm lying. This was actually in 6th grade before Dylan had that support in school. So I was trying to sort of convey that Dylan did understand. And no matter what I did, it was always reflected back to me that that was not the perception that they had of him. And so I remember I just had like this whiteboard strip, and he was mainstreamed into a science class, but they were just having him like color the volcano. They weren't really giving him any academic work at all. And so I would come in, I was very fortunate where I had the flexibility, and I would get in there and try to show things. And I remember held up a whiteboard, and I just picked 4 words like, I don't know, magma, and, the different words relating to whatever lesson they were learning. And had him like, it was just, a very simple question with a very simple answer, and he was able to point to it. And that actually was much more meaningful to them than if I had shown them a speech that he wrote about his most reflective thought, because that was too big of a leap, and it really was something they just were not open to. But they were open to the idea that maybe he could spell a simple word, that would be a big leap for them, So this is not a criticism at all of the professionals. I think we all know when we have a lens, it's difficult to turn that lens. And so sometimes it has to be moved very slowly, and some of us go like this, it just depends. But I'm going to say, if you want to speak to choices, I think that that's really huge.
Darlene, do you want to?
Oh, okay, yeah. And what Tommy's talking about is just, I just take a dry erase board, and you can take a picture board, it depends on what symbol your person processes and understands and uses. So it could be pictures or line drawings or words or letters. But if it can be words, that's a good thing, because you can quickly create those boards. You don't have to go find a picture. But you just write down 4 words. Always put a boundary around them and separate a little bit of spacing. They don't have to be big. You don't have to make things bigger. You just have to have space, so the person can be real clear that I'm touching this target, I'm touching this target. And then see if you present the board, if the person will answer the question. He may or may not need support even. May just be able to just touch on the answer, but sometimes no one's ever asked them to answer that question that way. And so as we create, you just are creating vocabulary about the topic. There you go, thank you, Tami. You're creating vocabulary about the topic that you're talking about, okay? So if I was talking about different bodies of water, I'd be saying, so one would be the really large body of water, that's the ocean. And sometimes on a farm, you might have a really small body of water, and that's the pond. But then there's a river that goes through. Meanwhile, you're writing these words down, you get done talking, and then you just ask questions. So what's the really large body of water called? Ocean. This sounds really simplistic and like kind of Pollyanna-like, but it really can be that easy. I did this with Sean the other day, and he was answering questions, and he was quite comfortable with it. And then I backed off, and it was fine. So there's a lot you can get from people, and it just kind of reminds you that, oh, they understand what I'm talking about. So that's kind of it, 101 in a nutshell there.
That is kind of how I taught my daughter with Down syndrome. So I think I'll use that at the meeting to help her express herself.
Be prepared. That's what you got to be prepared.
Good ideas.
Thank you, everybody. All right, we only have about 10 more minutes, and we have 4 questions, so we're going to try to get through them quickly. John Francis.
Hi, John. Judy, I just wanted to comment about earlier speaking to some of the differences between self-determination and like supported living, for example. And one thing I've observed with Sean's team is that, there have been a lot of challenges putting together a team that really gelled. Having to draw from one agency's pool of staffing, and that's just completely a thing of the past now. I mean, that the current team that is in fact gelling by and large comes from all over the place. I mean, there's a couple that came from, one agency. I think that may or may not continue to work at their. I think they do, but they come from one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different places that either are, independent companies or independent workers, and then another that probably came through a friend of the family. And so you can create a team that gels and not have to be subject to this pool from this one agency. And I think that ultimately for the future, that's the best route to take, because you can also draw from family and friends, and where you just don't have that with an agency. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yep. Thank you, John. That was really helpful. Christina and Johnny have a question.
I am still on the waiting list for self-determination. What can my mom and I do now to be ready when I get in? Thank you. 1, 4, 3.
That was awesome, Johnny. I love that you communicate through your own voice with technology. So for those of you, because you guys should know that Dylan isn't in self-determination either, Tommy's son. So there are ways to get ready, particularly for those of you who are non-speaking, and that is to really start thinking about the person-centered planning process, as well as who your circle of support is. You are allowed to move into the self-determination program on June 7th. Everybody's allowed to move in. That doesn't mean that you have to start your person-centered planning on June 7th. That means that you could already have done all the process by then, have had your IPP, so that on June 7th you move in. And so for those of you who are interested, I would really, really start that process. Go to first of all, make it very clear to your service coordinator that you will be moving into the self-determination program as soon as it's available to you. And then start thinking about the sort of supports that you're going to need to do an authentic person-centered plan. You should be able, this is something that has not been decided by DDS about whether people will be able to receive the person-centered planning funding in advance of their first person-centered plan. We know that money was available to the original 2,500, but DDS has not made the decision about whether they're going to offer it to everybody who's going into the program. I don't really understand how it's going to work, because you can't go into self-determination without doing a person-centered plan, but you can't spend money from your self-determination budget without being in the self-determination program. So are people going to have to pay out of their pockets to hire an independent facilitator to do the person-centered plan? Obviously, that's going to be highly discriminatory towards people who can't afford that. So that has certainly been on the list of all of us to talk to, that we've been actually for years been talking to DDS about this. But considering they can't even make a decision about COVID hours, which we've been asking them for the last 4 months, they're not making any decisions that need to be made for next year. So that's been very frustrating. But yeah, you really want to think about who you trust, Johnny. You really want to think about who you trust and who you'd want to be in your person-centered planning meeting. The individual should make that decision if they're over a certain age. Obviously a 5-year-old is not going to be, but a typical 5-year-old doesn't make decisions like that. So the older a person gets, the more authority and responsibility they have to move forward. So I hope that's helpful, Johnny.
Yes, thank you so much. Was it helpful?
Johnny, that was a great question.
When you, Judy, I know you had mentioned, we asked about a person-centered plan now. I know you had mentioned before there's a service code. Do you know what that service code is? We've not gotten a response yet.
Yeah, so I did ask my regional center what service code they use to do person-centered planning for people not in the self-determination program, and they didn't get back to me. All of the services that are provided through It is not 024. 024 is only the code for people who are currently in the self-determination program, who are part of the 2,500. So for people who are not part of the self-determination program yet, there is a way to get a person-centered plan paid for. I have seen it happen. I know of people who've had it several years ago before self-determination existed. So the 024 code is not the correct code. That is a generic code called parent reimbursement, which is actually a horrible code for them to use because it's caused all kinds of complications. But there is another code, and my suggestion is that you look through the DDS website on the list of services and service codes, and in there is something that can be used. So I know it's hard. It's hard. Okay, let's get David. David, did you have a question?
My process right now, we went for the person-centered plan. We did a person-centered plan.
Yeah.
And then from there, it went to an individualized budget plan.
Great.
Today was the annual meeting, my yearly. That's totally different. And then it'll go to an FMS. I think that's how.
So,
all right, it goes.
yeah, so it sounds like you're really heading in, you're heading into self-determination really soon, David. So we're excited about that.
I'm halfway there.
All right, fantastic. Good to know. All right, Jackie, I'm going to have you ask the last question, and then we're going to have to end this meeting. Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It was more a comment to the person that asked about how do you convince the person, you know, with the child that they are capable of more. And I just wanted to offer the perspective that I think hope has a lot to do with it. And especially if that individual is older, that parent has kind of been through the war. And to ask them to put out hope one more time that this is the thing that's going to take, right, with their child is a very hard thing to do. But personally, in the parents that I see, I think you have to chip away at it, as some of you mentioned, right? Plant the seed, offer the little things that like Darlene has presented here, the choice making and that, and build it slowly. But from the other side, when you're looking at that parent or that you're that person trying to convince a family because you see it, you have to understand where the parents have been, right? That they have emotional wounds and they have built a wall to protect themselves and their child because, you know, I'm a parent, having been in meetings where you need to talk down the ability of your child in order to get services, you know, with or without that child present, it's, you know, and the kids have lived their life being talked about as if they're not in the room, and it's not usually positive, you know, when you think back to IEPs and that. So I just wanted to offer that as a perspective as well. Thank you.
That was really great. So I love that. Does anybody have we have one more minute. Anybody want to give a sort of final comment based on what Jackie just presented, or a final go for it, self-determination, rah, rah?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Tami and Harvey is saying. And really, you know, as a communication specialist and a person who's been advocating for communication for lots of different people, not that I'm an expert in your lives, but the reality is that I can't see another way that you're going to be able to justify to the people you're having to talk to how this needs to happen, and it should happen, and there shouldn't be any barriers to it. Because every single other way, insurance companies or different codes that they're looking up, it's a barrier, it's a barrier, it's a barrier. And when you talk about self-determination, you're talking about the fact that, no, this is the bottom line, this is happening. Now, how is it going to happen? It gives you that foundation to do that. And I haven't ever seen anything that's even come close to it. I think it has to be the way we go.
Thank you, Darlene. I so appreciate it. I know that there was a question in the chat from somebody asking if you could have a person one person to write your person-centered plan and an independent facilitator separate, yes, you absolutely can do that. The original person-centered planner is, if you were in the self-determination program, using a special code to get paid called 024. Then you put the independent facilitator in your spending plan for once you go into the self-determination program. So here's the thing I want to tell everybody is that we have been doing these SDP Connects for months and months now. And for you to, we have, I think we're going to have to start over with a new, with ones we've done before. But listen, we have talked about the individual budget. We have talked about FMSs. We have talked about spending plans. And if you would like to see our conversations about this, you can go to our website. That is disabilityvoicesunited.org. And you can absolutely get the recordings of all of our dozens and dozens of SDP Connects. You can also purchase the books that we have written on self-determination, and you can also get on our mailing list so that you are part of, you get notices about each of our weekly SDP Connects. I want to tell you that we're not going to be meeting next week because our wonderful interpreter has a previous engagement, and we are committed to doing this with Spanish interpretation. We will be back the following week, which is the day after the election, which leads me to say, I hope that 100% of the people out in this group are voting. And
I voted.
I'm so glad, David.
Biden, not Trump.
So that's fine. We are nonpartisan and not telling you who to vote for. We are just passionate about making sure that everybody has voted, including people with disabilities need to vote. And the election, while it is in early November, you can be voting now in the state of California. Everybody should have gotten a ballot. If you are not registered to vote, you can register to vote up until election day. At the polls, you can register to vote. So people with disabilities should be registered and they should be voting. This is an incredibly important election for people with disabilities. If you have any questions about your rights to vote, if you have a disability, or if you want plain language materials in various languages, please go to disabilityvoteca.org, disabilityvoteca.org. It's a coalition that we are part of, the DVU is part of, with organizations up and down the state, and we've produced great materials. So please go vote. That is your assignment between this SDP Connect and the next SDP Connect, is to make sure that 100% of the people out there vote. So thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you in 2 weeks after you voted. Actually, if you didn't vote, don't even think of getting on the SDP Connect. We don't want to see you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Self-Determination Resource Fair, November 1st.
Oh,
I
yes.
saw that. That's good.
Thank you. John Francis. The North LA Regional Center is putting on a virtual resource fair for self-determination. Did you put something in the chat about this, John?
I did.
Where is this on Zoom?
It is by Zoom. Everybody is invited. You do not have to be a North LA client. We really, really hope, we'll promote it on our Facebook page, at DVU's Facebook page, and we will really try to get lots of people to show up. Okay, John?
Right on, right on. Thank you, Judy.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.